Okay, so statistically speaking, it's very difficult for podcasters to be successful, right? So like I believe it's like something. I thought you shared this. Did you not share this with me? Like 70% of shows don't make it to 3 episodes, and then 90% don't get to 10. Isn't that correct?
I did.
So
I did. It's something like that. I can't recall the exact statistic right now, but you're right. It's a lot. When we talk about success, that's relative, right? But the reason that statistic is interesting is because it takes, I think the point of that is the consistency that podcasting takes, the energy and the tenacity, really, that, a lot of podcasters just don't have for it. And I think that's why that statistic is particularly interesting. Not necessarily, I don't think it's necessarily related to success, more to the tenacity to continue building something.
Okay, cool. And so, and what is so like, as far as the SME, like this, I know we talked about this, but who is the like go-to resource for the, like in the, like who's the 101 czar? Is there one?
I don't think there is. I think there are many, and this is a growing industry, right? But if I was going to pinpoint a world to look at, if you were thinking about podcasting, it would be the people who were in radio previously. And I'm biased because I'm one of them. But there are a lot of similarities between the skill set needed for radio and for podcasting. So I think if I was going to be looking at, if you're thinking about the people who are leading the way from a production point of view, and we can talk about presenters, that's different, then I'd be looking at people who've worked in radio for a long time and know the ins and outs of what works in audio.
Okay, and then but if I told you that there's a huge market for coaching and people want coaching and people are paying stupid money for coaching, it's actually an industry that I hate. Like, generally speaking, to your knowledge, all things launch your podcast coach. Like I really would like to coin you the podcast queen, or the podcast queen or king. That doesn't exist, right? That does not, that you know of. There is no place for the easy, I don't want to call it the easy button, but the user's guide to podcasting. That is not a thing currently.
I think there are many versions of that. I don't think there's one pinnacle version, but there are many versions of that. I have one.
And you have the course, and I'm sorry, so you do have a course already?
I run a masterclass, which is a 1 hour how-to every month. Yeah, I think there are a lot of people who have those expertise. I'm meeting more and more of them at conferences, in a lot of places that focus on podcasting and want to tell people how to do it. There's lots, but I don't know if there's one that I would applaud particularly, Kevin.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, I mean, I guess, and maybe I'm stupid, but when I was trying to get into this, like, this is how we ended up together. It was like, we just put the post on the Facebook group, and then, but so then just giving, and we'll dive into our specific stuff, but like giving somebody, okay, so what I need you to help me understand is like, so production ranges. So let me make sure I get this right, because we're going to like graft the school as we go. And like, if anybody's wondering why is he doing this, is like, because I think it's, I'm going to use the word, it's like disgusting how hard it is and difficult it is, and how easy it should be, right? And I don't mean to say it that way, but it's like, so you've got, and I'm somebody that didn't want to be a podcaster, but we can get into that here in a minute. But so let me see if I get the categories right. So you've got, these are all the components of a successful podcast, or a non-successful, but just all the components, right? You've got facilitations, you've got facilitation, guests, topics, sponsorship, editing / production.
I mean, all these elements can fit into production. Continue with your list. Continue.
And then you've got marketing and social media. Is there anything I'm missing that's a piece to this?
They kind of break down into pre-production, so all the stuff before you're producing, the production side of things, where I'm thinking about, the recording, the editing, that side of things, and then the post-production. So yes, the marketing, the social media, getting it out into the world, kind of breaks down into those 3 sections. But I think if people are listening to this, and if they go back to the previous episode, we break that down in more detail.
And And then your thesis is it's a lot of the post production, the editing and the quality is key. My thing, and like both have to be true, but editing, quality versus content and guest. It seems that most people are guest. I would say guest heavy, right? Everything that seems to drive most of like it's like if you have interesting guests, you have a good podcast, right? Not necessarily, but then like there's not an emphasis on content quality, topics, and then there seems to be, and I've been talking to people, there's the people like me that don't care what it sounds like as long as I can hear it, and then there's the people that that want it to be crisp, clear, and like quality, and there seems to be two camps. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, the topics, the content, the guests, these things, you have to hold them with the quality, if you ask me. I think these things go together. You can't have a quality podcast with no content and without guests who are interesting and share interesting things, you know? But I think the reason why I pursue that so much is because I think that's what sets some podcasts apart. The more podcasts that come out into the world that are lower quality, the more important I think that the quality is, because that's the bit that often sets people apart from a podcasting point of view.
Okay, and then there's like, I'm gonna call it like low latency. Like there's people, and I've been on these shows, like they facilitate it, they're editing as they go, like they're self-editing, they're self-facilitating, and they put it up, and so like you can almost do no production cost in that world. And there's like in your world, that's a huge risk. Like you don't that is a low quality product, right?
It could be. I mean, they might be a master of all things. I think generally people aren't. What do you think? I mean, yeah.
Well, I need to listen to, because like the problem is, so I'm part of the camp that I like listen to the people. I want to know the people. I'm trying to read the people, and I'm trying to read like, is the topic interesting to me? But then you have like tier one, which we're going to put you in that camp, is like, it's sharp, it's crisp, we care about all things. And then like there's this like huge swath of like mid-tier that ranges, and I'm making this up as I go, but it's like, so if we're talking, so somebody comes to you and they're like, I can get guests, I can facilitate, I can conversate, right? I want you to produce. What is your recommendation? Because we talked about like my option was like $50 a show or $1,500 a show, right? And then you can pay up to $5,000 a show. So like, how do you? And we talked like it sounds like about a total of, so there's literally just the hour to 2 hours on the pod, no extra time, almost no extra time, and then there's like in your world there's like 8 hours, 5 to 8 hours of production time.
Yeah.
So how does if somebody's listening to this is like, I want to do this, it's like, what? Those are big swings, particularly if you're doing multiple a week, right? So how should somebody start editing their own? They start with you. What would your recommendation be?
As in terms of, is the question how much should they do themselves, or what they could potentially do themselves?
Well, I guess what I'm trying to understand is like, yeah, if I can do it, should podcasters, should they DIY it? Should they go to your masterclass, learn the production, and do it themselves, or should they be paying? Like, does it depend on what you're trying to do with it? Like, when is the point with which you move away from a $50 an hour production, or not $50 an hour, $50 production fee to a $1,500 production fee? What's that benefit of the bargain, or what should be considered when they go to do that?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a very personal thing, and podcasting is very nuanced, and the reason why there are different price points is the same as many businesses. It's expertise, it's experience, and it's who you're dealing with and what their prerogative is. Some of the concept work, I think that is really important for podcasters to do themselves, regardless of whether they're going to work with a production company or producer or not, because having the strong idea, having that concept that they want to go back to again and again and revisit. And you know this because you go back to your podcast, once, twice, 3 times a week sometimes, and you want to, you really need to be fascinated by the subject. That's something I'd always advocate for people to do themselves. And then beyond that, it's very much a personal thing. It's, what's the What's the goal? Is the goal to become, the next big podcast? In that case, maybe you want to have a bit of expertise behind you, people who can share their experience and, the things that they've learned through the years of podcasting that have existed in a big way now, which probably, less than 10, but can share that expertise, the do's and don'ts. But there's a lot of people out there who want to try it themselves, and I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that. I just think it might be a rockier road. It's like most things in life, isn't it? Or business. If you've got a mentor, helping you along the way. And the other side of it, of course, is, as you said, spending a couple of hours a week versus a couple of days a week on a podcast that's very different for different people. How much do they want to put into it? How much time do they have to put into it?
Understood. But so then I think the thing that I'm trying to paint as, because I faced this decision and I don't know if I did it right, wrong, otherwise, is like, we'll leave it alone. I'm just like, what's the difference in I need to just invest the time to look at, and I know you've done this for me, but give me like, so the shows that are doing a really good job on the production, give me the 3. You really like, oh my gosh, Diaries of the CEO, like he's high end, right?
Absolutely.
And then
he has a strong team, big team.
And then who's that other guy that everybody likes? I think I don't know if he's Australian or British. Everybody likes him.
Are you talking about Joe Rogan?
No, you don't like him. He's low. You would call his stuff low latency, right?
Maybe.
You don't exactly admire his production, right?
I think he's doing something right, but I don't think the production's necessarily where I'd have it. Who's the British guy that you're talking about?
Trying to find it.
Give me a clue.
Texted it to me. The moment. Change your reality. When they send him on YouTube, I don't know who he's a bald dude.
He can be representative if you like. But what do you want to get to?
No, I just want to know. I want to. Some fucking sponsorship. I can't find it. Chris, is it Chris Williamson? Yeah, Chris Williamson. Would you be a fan of his production? It seems pretty good.
Modern Wisdom. I mean, he's also doing something right, but I'm not a huge fan of his. But that doesn't mean that he's doing anything wrong. I just don't know of him.
All right, give me your next 2. So Diary of a CEO is one. What's the other? What are the others?
I like the High Performance podcast. I like what they do. That's another one that I always will kind of showcase. They have this kind of strong team and consistency in what they provide.
Interesting. And so what is the model for success when you say they have a strong team? So let's call these the tier 1s of the world, just so people know what they're getting into. Like what do you need? You need what is a strong team for a podcaster? So they're doing, let's look at Diary. What does he do? 1 a day? Is he 1 a day? 2 a week?
He does 2 a week, and then he does 2 highlights, or 1 or 2 highlights a week as well. I think something that you and I have spoken about before, kind of picking out really key elements of an episode, short bits, shorter clips. And he releases those. So, and behind that is, they have a really powerful team behind it, because the different elements of the production that we've kind of spoken about before, they have elevated and built on. So the pre-production side of things, the scripting and the research and the guest booking, that becomes, more jobs. And the recording and the editing side of things, they still have one guy in charge of that actually, but they have more behind it. And then the social team is, social is a big thing for them. So I think they have, a lot of their effort goes into social.
Like, to be a legit podcast, how many downloads is it? 5,000 or what is it?
I'd have to find out for you, because it changes every time, but we have that. There's a table of podcast downloads, isn't there? 1 second.
And I think that's a worthy curiosity. So that's a moving target. The most popular podcast is a moving, like generally is
absolutely.
There's not a general standard when you this is a successful podcast. Like, and I know I gotta go.
So it's constantly being updated So there's a July 2025 stat here. So if you want to be in the top 1% of podcasts, you're hitting 4,000 downloads. If you want to be in the top 10%, you're hitting 450 downloads.
That doesn't seem that hard to me. Am I stupid?
That's within the first 7 days. That's within the first 7 days of an episode being released. But it's a moving target because this industry is moving, right?
Yeah,
it really is a moving thing, growing thing.
And remind me again, and just so it's fresh on my mind, and I understand that we're rehashing some things, and we'll dive into the new stuff. But if you're getting 450 downloads in 7 days, what would you? And I can ask ChatGPT this, but I want to hear it from the podcast queen herself, as I've coined you. What is the per episode in sponsorship generally range? What would your guess be?
I think this is what we got into before, because there is a statistic around this and I don't think it's correct. So, and this is like an in-depth thing, but top level, you can approach sponsorship in a multitude of ways. If you look at paying like the kind of agency setup of a cost per download or a cost per listener, you will make very little. If you go directly to a sponsor yourself, then you can charge, honestly, the world's your oyster. I couldn't put a number on that, because I think it's, with podcasting particularly, it's about engagement with your audience. That's what people are buying into. So an example for you, I started a podcast in the Middle East about women in sport, and it was completely off the ground, like totally from the ground up. And a sports brand got involved with that from the get-go, because of a personal, kind of rapport and relationship, but also because they really wanted to target women in sport in the Middle East. And we were actively targeting that market. So I think that same example works well across lots of different podcasts. And that gives you so much scope for sponsorship income, but there isn't a number that relates to that per se.
No, I'm speaking to somebody that, like, I think unfortunately, like, humans fall victim to simple thought, and like they don't get in. So what I'm trying to guard against for anybody that thinks they want a podcast that hasn't like really thought it all the way through. Like our podcasts, these are platforms for a myriad of other things. So that, I think that's where. Anyway, and we haven't monetized it yet, and that's why we haven't promoted it yet. So but. I guess the question is, when you say the world is your oyster, so like, let's say you get to a top 10, do you have any idea what a top 50% is? Is there like 50 download, like a mediocre, instead of being top 10%. So let's say mediocre, you're getting 100 to say 1,000 downloads in 2 weeks or something like that. Like, what would you expect? And let's say you can get anywhere from 3 to 7 overall sponsors, and then you can have 1 to 4 show sponsors. And if, like, we're just going to say, if you're good, you're not going to interrupt people's viewing pleasure with ads. You're going to do it organically. But so just say that, let's just say you have a moderately successful podcast, 3 to 7 like overall show sponsors, and you figured out some way to make a benefit of the bargain for them. And then you have 1 to 4 shows. Like, what kind of income should somebody be expecting if they, and like understanding that if they're moderately successful, they've already beat like 70 to 90% of the people. Like, that's, just to be having a regularly occurring show with somebody, somewhere over 100 downloads after a month or so. I'm using very, very low bar for moderately successful. What would you envision monetarily, like, that would do? Best case, worst case.
Hundreds to thousands of dollars per episode is what you should be looking for, but it's so much more complicated than that. If you approach it in the way that I think people should be approaching this, which is not, like, if you want the simplistic way, you go to an agency, they sell your listenership of 100 listeners per episode, and you make, less than $100 an episode. But that's not the way to approach it, in my opinion.
And the agency, just so we're clear, there are agencies that are out there that are like, basically, they are the liaison. They know the companies. They'll put you in front of the companies. They're basically a broker of sponsorship. So they're the easy button, but they take most of the fee.
Yeah, exactly. They'll put your podcast into a vertical of sports podcasts or religious podcasts or construction podcasts, and they'll sell those as a total of 1,000 downloads, with your 100 being 10% of that. And you'll, reap the rewards of that, which are not, nothing, but then they're not what you could be achieving if you form those relationships and get those sponsorships for your podcast yourself.
Generally speaking, $100 to $5,000 per sponsor per ad. If you're getting 5,000 an episode, you're doing really well.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then so what's left for us is to, I think to answer. I think we should help. Part of this is all just a demonstration, right? This whole thing is a demonstration, not of anything with an agenda, but here's what it looks like. Here was the journey. So
yeah.
I'm ever curious on both of our shows. We have one that's very clearly with an audience that, we have one that is very Atomic Construction has a bunch of companies that would want to interact with that audience. So that's option A.
Absolutely.
Option B is there's a bunch of companies that might. It's not directly in Better Questions. It's nobody can monetize spiritual curiosity, right? Like a journal company, maybe. So that's.
Yeah, I wouldn't say nobody.
I really want to. Yeah, no, yeah. Well, it's interesting, but so what I would like to do is revisit this after now we have the shows and go back, and I just want to see what the range is, and then because what they're all going to be small-minded about is very easy if you have an extremely popular podcast, right? That's very easy. What's very difficult is getting people to bet on you before you've monetized, before you've advertised, because they have to speculate. What if it's not successful? So it's a chicken or the egg problem, because you can't.
That's why I often advocate for either that niche audience, as you said, like Atomic Construction obviously has, or that personal, a lot of the reason, we've talked about this before as well, but a lot of the reason why a brand might want to interact with your podcast is you, Kevin. Or a sponsor might want to interact with your podcast is you. You're the host.
Yeah, it scares me because I'm I don't want to be, but yeah.
You know what I mean? It's an association with what you represent, what you're building, what you're doing, what you're creating.